In this video, you guys are going to learn how to actually do lifts that transfer over to the mound, and they're not keeping you stuck at the same velocity. No, they're not keeping you stiff right after you do those workouts. Now, for this specific videos, we're going to be targeting, when I mentioned lifting big to throw gas, we're going to be targeting the big three, which is back squats, deadlifts, and bench press. Obviously, we all know them to be the metric driven exercises, the exercises that are going to increase your velocity by 5 miles an hour. And I'm sorry to tell you, that's not true. A lot of you guys by now may probably have that experience where you did it and maybe you got 1 to 2 miles an hour out of it. Great. There's other guys that did it and got absolutely nothing from it and probably even gotten worse. So we're going to go over all of that and what you should be doing instead to help your body increase velocity and transfer that over to the mound. Now, before I dive into this, just want to tell you guys a little bit about myself. My name is Anthony Rodriguez. I am a performance coach for Versatile Athletics, where we've trained over 190 plus athletes ranging from high school, JUCO, D1, and the professional level. I myself have been up to 96 miles an hour as a left-handed pitcher, and since starting this and helping each and every single athlete understand how they should increase velocity by helping them understand their natural movement tendencies and giving them the correct path in which they should follow to increase velocity, we've historically, every single athlete on average that comes to us increased their velocity by 5.9 miles an hour within 10 weeks. So go ahead and dive straight into the video. So we're speaking about lifting big to throw gas. Again, the big three: back squats, bench press, and deadlifts. We're going to go over the top 5 things that are wrong with these exercises that you could do better or probably eliminate as a whole. We're going to be going over the sagittal plane, what that is, the core, and how that's involved within these exercises. Number 3, bilaterality. Number 4, the metrics that you guys are imposing to be hidden for this. And number 5, the force velocity curve, what that is and what we can do to make it better. First and foremost, let's start with the sagittal plane. Back squats, bench press, deadlifts. They are all done in the sagittal plane, and to define what sagittal plane is, it's technically up and down in one single form. Now, that is one part of a multi-planar movement, which includes after that the frontal plane and the transverse plane. If we were to put these together and we were to look at, okay, how do we move on the mound? What is the phase in the delivery that we spend the most amount of time in? It's the stride phase. The stride phase happens side to side. After the stride phase is finished, then we're going to incorporate that rotation through our upper half. So now we're incorporating the frontal, which is side to side, and rotation, which is the transverse plane. Now we put way too much focus on these 3 big lifts, and it's all just teaching us how to move up and down, which is why athletes then struggle to transfer their velocity when they're going back onto the mound. Number 2, the core. Yes, those 3 exercises are compound lifts, which means a lot of muscle groups are going to be recruited, which is a good thing. The only problem is that since we're doing it under a bar, our core is not going to be bracing the same way as if we were to use something else, because now we are in a fixated pattern because of a barbell. We have equal weights, which there's nothing wrong. Again, we can progress this, we will get down to it, but the core is not getting as much attention. And just to let you guys know, the core is probably one of the most important things that you guys can work on to help transfer what's happening on the lower half to what's happening on the upper half. Number 3, bilaterality. These 3 exercises both involve 2 arms, 2 legs, whichever one you're doing. The problem is that even when we're pitching, we're never really on our 2 legs until we land. And even when we land, we're in a split stance position. We're not really in a bilateral athletic position. So that is one thing that you guys want to be aware of, and it is going to help specialize what you guys are doing within the gym, converting that into a much more specific phase that you guys can do differently in the gym that's going to also transfer over on the mound. We will go over how. Number 4, metrics. Again, the biggest problem with metrics is, yes, it's cool if you hit them. I can tell you guys from my own experience, I've hit all of these metrics, whether it's back squats, reverse lunge, chin-ups, dumbbell row, deadlifts, bench press, you name it. And even though, yes, I was stronger, it doesn't do me any good if I'm stronger, but I cannot transfer that energy, right? Because if you're lifting to be strong, but your movement capacity sucks, good luck trying to get that to transfer over. So metrics in this point really mean absolutely nothing. Number 5, the force velocity curve. Believe it or not, a lot of us from lifting heavier are actually moving slower than what we were before we actually started lifting heavier. Now, I know a lot of contradictions are that, yeah, well, if your force is a lot higher, then therefore you can produce a lot more speed. Theoretically, yes, but you guys are also neglecting the rest of what that force velocity curve looks like, which looks something like this. A lot of us are living in this range of max strength training anywhere from 90 to 100% of our 1 rep max. And we're completely neglecting everything else here. So yes, there are some things that you guys can still do to be able to hit these other targets. But if we're always living up here, guess what we're not training our body to move like? Speed, right? Which speed is also something that we must have on the mound in order to be able to fire quicker, be more explosive, things like that. Again, it is not the same for everybody, but it is something that a lot of you guys are neglecting, just thinking that lifting big and doing back squats, deadlifts, and bench press are going to get you to above that 90-mile-an-hour range. Okay, now that we've covered the top 5 reasons why lifting big will probably not get you to throw harder, let's go ahead and get them back in and go one by one and see what we should be doing instead. Now, in overall, to summarize it, the biggest thing that you guys want to do is that you want to work on your movement capacity first before you're being able, or before you're able to even add a lot more weight onto the barbell. So what do I mean by movement capacity? By movement capacity is simply your posture, the way that you're moving through all these different exercises. So even if you're doing a back squat, it better not be something where you're like leaning sideways, or if you're doing a bench press, you're also leaning sideways. Again, these are all overcompensations that really, if you just keep doing them over and over and over again in the gym, guess where else they're going to show up? They're going to show up on the mound. The first reason we started off was because those 3 exercises are done in the sagittal plane. So the way that we can fix that is doing multi-planar lifts. So now we're going to go ahead and not neglect the other planes of motion that our bodies can go into, which is the transverse plane, rotation, and the frontal plane, which is side to side, which is where our mechanics and our delivery spends the most amount of time off. What are things that we can do here? We can do things like lateral lunges. We can do things like met bow throwing. So lateral lunges is a good way to go onto the frontal plane. Maybe you can do something like lateral step ups as well, forms of met bow throwing that are shuffle step throws, or simply just trunk rotation throws with a met bow. This is, again, going to transfer into that other side plane of motion, which is the transverse plane for you guys, and is going to be more directed towards what you guys are doing on the mound to have a higher conversion of showing up from the gym onto the mound itself. Now, a more advanced way, which is something that we do more with our athletes, is training their muscle slings. Our bodies are all interconnected. We don't have one muscle that just works and then the other one does nothing. No, while one muscle is working, another one is synergistically helping that muscle, while another one is lengthening and the other one's contracting. That's a whole nother topic for a different video. But if you guys actually want to know a little bit more about that, I actually already have a video on how we train our athletes' muscle slings, which you can just go ahead and click. The link will be right here. For number 2, we spoke about the core and how it's being targeted when you're under a barbell. Now, we are going to speak about what we can do to actually target the core a lot better, and again, have that transfer better from what you're doing in the gym towards the mound. And that is going to be done by including more contralateral lifts. So in other words, having a set of weight on one side and nothing really on the other side. It could just be unilateral lift, something like a reverse lunge. Again, you can have one weight on the other side or not. Other examples of contralateral lifts are going to be RDLs. Now, yes, you may be asking yourself, Anthony, but that's happening up and down. Even though it is, the fact that we have weight on one side of the body and not both, or that we're just using one muscle group, our core is trying to fight anti-flexion, lateral flexion, and just being as neutral as possible, which is exactly what contralateral lifts help with. Now, again, some other equipment that you guys can use for this is dumbbells. Dumbbells even if you do a reverse lunge with 2 dumbbells compared to a barbell, yes, you have the same amount of weight on both sides. However, remember that the barbell only has a fixed path in which it goes through, as the dumbbells, they have, yes, somewhat of a fixed path, but they have some more micro movements just because of our asymmetry. So for example, like let's say if I'm doing a reverse lunge, as I'm going down, I'm maybe flexing on one side. So again, this is what I'm talking about, where if you're flexing on that one side, you can just put a lot more focus on that core activation, which is really something that won't happen much if you're doing a reverse lunge. So it may happen, but it won't be that dynamic to doing them with dumbbells. Now, cables are also a great one. You can get super creative with these. Even a way that we can include them in contralateral lifts is you can do a split stance, cable press, split stance, cable row. Even instead of doing Y stance, cable rotation, which again, that's also targeting the transverse plane. So now you see how everything that we've been speaking about is all coming along together. You can also get more creative if you're that advanced in doing it on one leg with cable counter rotation. So that is the contralateral lifts and how it has a lot more effect on the core and is going to help transfer through those different muscle groups that we spoke about. The multiplanar lifts and the muscle slings is going to help transfer more of what you're doing there onto the mound. Now, with exactly what I just mentioned is also how we're involving more of the core, and we're also escaping that bilaterally position and doing it in a more unilateral fashion, in which is also involving the other main points that I had also mentioned. Now, number 4, we spoke about hitting those metrics times 2 your body weight for your back squat. Same thing for bench press, times 1.75 your body weight for a reverse lunge. And while all those are great metrics to hit, it is more important that you're able to transfer those metrics rather than just hitting them, because if you just hit them, then that's just really energy that's just flowing on through the body. We want to make sure that our movement capacity is at its peak, right? So it's exactly what I mentioned at the beginning. So when you guys are even doing these other lifts, or maybe you're even doing the back squat, bench press, and the deadlifts, we want to make sure that we are lifting with as great of a posture that we can based on our limitations and natural motor preferences, which is also a different video. But we want to make sure that we are properly aligned as we're doing these lifts, so we don't have energy going everywhere, and now we're teaching our body how to produce the energy and how to transfer it over through other muscle slings or different muscles as we're also moving. Now, another way that I love to also transfer movement quality is through locomotion lifts. So let's say you actually just want to do the barbell for a lunge. Instead of doing a forward lunge in place, maybe now we can go out and walk doing those lunges. This is going to provide a little bit of disturbance. Again, now we're targeting the core, contralateral lifts, and we're also focused on movement quality while moving, because remember, on the mound, we are to some extent also moving from one place to another. Is going to work great in helping you guys transfer that center of gravity as well. Even doing things like lateral lunges, you can simply go back, but if you want to add a little bit more locomotion, more movements, more motion, you can just continue going side to side and then going back down the same road. You can also do things like bear calls, and are great exercises to improve movement quality that will have a lot more transfer than just trying to hit all of these different metrics that even when you hit them, your movement capacity is so low that once you get on the mound, you're just stiff and you have no idea what's going on. All right, now for the last one, this is probably going to be the simplest one for a lot of you guys. We spoke about the force velocity curve, where a lot of you guys are literally living in this upper half range. You guys are lifting 80 to 90 to 100% of your 1 rep max. And while it's okay to do that, remember that the more that we just do it and neglect the rest of the force velocity curve, we're actually making ourselves a lot slower. What you guys should do instead, this is the easiest way that you guys can go ahead and target this bottom half portion, because if you're up here and then you get this down here, you will meet also somewhere in the middle, and you can also directly target the middle part. Most best way for you guys to target speed strength is do more plyometrics, jumps, single leg jumps, med ball throwing. Now again, this is tying up all of the other stuff that we've already covered here, the contralateral, the multi-planar movements. Another simple way that you guys can do this as well is, if you're sticking with back squat, deadlifts, benches, is instead of trying to lift for your max rep, instead of also trying to lift with the max amount of weight that you can possibly bear, literally drop your weight down towards the 30 to 60% range and just move the weight as fast as you can. Do it for anywhere from 2 to 3 sets for 2 to 3 reps with about 90 seconds to 3 minutes of rest in between. That is by far the easiest thing that you guys can do to get bits and pieces of the force velocity curve. Again, there is also a trick to that. When we train our athletes, we focus on what their natural motor preferences are. They're all on a different continuum. From wherever they fall in the continuum, we now know and understand, well, how much to give them on lifting big, how much to give them plyometrics and speed work, all of that. Now, with everything we just discussed, I'm actually giving you guys away for free a 2 to 3 day lifting plan that targets every single thing that we just went over here. You guys can do this either in the off season, preseason, in summer ball. It doesn't matter. You can do it, and I promise you will get a lot more benefits out of it than doing your regular lift big, throw guys, benches, and back squats and deadlifts, which are fine. You've just been neglecting all of those other 5 pieces that I just mentioned here. So go ahead and grab that. You can go down into the description, find it in the link in there. Now, if this is also too much for you guys, feel free to book a call with us where we're going to talk about where you guys are in your career, what's holding you back. We will see if we can actually help. Now, everything that I've just mentioned to you works. It's worked for over 190 plus athletes that we've had. Now, keep in mind, there is just a lot more specialized because we assess their motor preferences, we assess limitations, all that stuff. So we are working with a lot more data with everything that we're giving them. So just to give you guys an example, I'll give you guys Trip here. Trip came to us throwing 85, 86. Now, he was a big guy, great foundation. He had solid movement patterns. The only problem is that he spent his whole entire life lifting big. He was in a point where his muscles, his body was compressed. He was experiencing lower back pain after he threw. He wasn't getting in all the most optimal positions that he needed, and he was also muscling up, flying open, which wasn't helping his velocity. So after the first month of doing our training, he was now sitting 88, 89 more consistently. He wasn't flying open. He was throwing more strikes. He was getting in better positions, and the best thing out of it all is that his lower back pain was completely gone. Again, guys, go ahead, take advantage of it. Go click the link in the description where you guys can get this lifting plan. If you guys want a more direct approach, working one-on-one with us, go ahead and book in a call with us down in the description, and I'll see you guys on my next one.